in his rendition of Yedid Nefesh. Not the niggin that we sing in shul or sometimes at Sudash Lishit, but that doesn't make a bit of a difference. A very, very inspiring melody that Avram Fried set to Yedid Nefesh. I want to thank my wife Miriam for suggesting that we do Yedid Nefesh. We were doing various other Zmirot. She said, what about Yedid Nefesh? So I said, okay, Yedid Nefesh. That's it. So this poem, which is four stanzas with the acrostic of Shem Hashem, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, Yedid, Hadur, Vatik, Yigaleh. So obviously it's a type of ode, O-D-E, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and basically a tefillah of asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to help himself, the author, and Am Yisrael get closer to him, which ultimately will be fully realized in the days of Yemot HaMashiach. Now, it's not an accident that we sing this song, Kabbalat Shabbat. Some sing it also for Sudash Lishit. So, each will do it according to their minhag, but many Bata Knesset will kick off Kabbalat Shabbat with the singing of Yedid Nefesh. And clearly, seeing already in some of the previous Zemirot of Shabbat, the theme of Olam Haba, Yom Shabbat Menucha, there's something about Shabbat that smacks of the spirit of Yemot HaMashiach. Certainly in Shlomo Alevi Al-Kabatz's L'cha Dodi Likrat Kala, using phrases lifted straight out of Yeshayahu Hanavi in the later Prakim, where he deals with Nechama, with consolation and Geulah. There's no question that the Yemot HaMashiach, Acharit HaYamim, end of days theme is embedded into the idea of Shabbat, and we'll expand upon that. We'll do the L'cha Dodi Emet Hashem. So here too, this is quite appropriate for a pre-Shabbat song, getting us into the atmosphere and environment of what the uniqueness of Shabbat was all about. I remember the Rav wrote many times about what he remembers in Chaslovich, in that town where his father was the Rav, and the people would walk around during the week in shaggy clothing. They were very, very poor and all that. When it came to Shabbos, everybody just looked different. And they just left the weekday behind them. And that's why it was so difficult to exit Shabbat. And that's why they just kept it rolling as long as it was halachically conceivable, because they just did not want to go back into that world. We even mentioned it when we did Ka'er Sof, where Rabbi Aaron Mikarlin talks about the fact that we're going back into the weekday that nourishes from Shabbat, because something's got to remain from Shabbat. Just to go back to that weekday was so dreary, it was so saddened, it would sadden everyone, and so on. So let's look at this Yedid Nefesh. If you just take a peek at the sources, something very strange here. Can you imagine I'm bringing Mikorot? There's not one Rambam here? Should make a Shechiyanu. That I'm not bringing one Rambam in a source page. There's one Gemara, and that's source number 2. And on the second page, source number 6. On top, there's a Zohar. Everything else is a pasuk in Chumash, in Tanakh. It's many from Tehillim or Shir Hashirim, and some come from the Siddur. 1 or 2 come from the Siddur. But so basically, what we have here is a type of cut and paste job, where the author, in a moment we'll speak about the author, took phrases out of Tanakh and put them together and made a song. So it's a very, very, very artistic put together of this Yedid Nefesh. The author is Rabbi Elazar Azkari, sometimes spelled with a kuf, not a kaf. 16th century Tzvat means something, most probably to all of us. That's the period of Rabbi Yosef Karo in Tzvat, the Rabbi Yaakov Beirav, the Moshe Alshich, the great Kabbalists of the 16th century of Tzvat, Yisrael Najara, the author of the Karibon, and so on. We have a street after Yisrael Najara, the Angel's Bakery, that I think closed down. Used to be there. The street is still there. The Rabbi Elazar Azkari wrote a halachic book called Sefer Charedim, nothing to do with politics, nothing at all with modern day politics. Sefer Haredim was a book of mitzvot divided into the mitzvot that are performed by the human body. And he divides all the mitzvot by eyes, nose, ears, hands, fingers, legs, and stomach. Don't ask. He just takes the human anatomy and he shows how the entire body parts are there and were given either mitzvot or restrictions, averot, and there's some connection between the 613 mitzvot and the 613 parts of the body that we say in the Mishaberach for a chola, the Ramach Evarav 248 limbs and 365 gidim, which we don't know what they are, but there's some association of Taryag with the number of mitzvot, and this Rabbi Elazar Askari draws that association in a book called Sefer Haredim. In that book, he has an appendix where he wrote a bunch of poems, and the most famous of his poems is Yedid Nefesh. Now, we actually found his handwriting, that is to say, his original. So we now, in spite of the fact that some sidurim and some birchonim, that's the translation for benches, right? So benches is not English. I know that people grew up with the word benches, right? Bar mitzvah benches and benches where you sit on the benches, right? Right? Well, some ball players are on the bench. They're not starting players. But the benchers are birchonim, and you have Yedid Nefesh. And we even grew up with a very, very famous song, the nusach is wrong. And we'll see, I hate to ruin the song, but we will see from having the very, very book, Haredim, Sefer Haredim, of Rabbi Avraham Elazar Askari. So now we know the exact nusach, and it's been printed properly in the Rinat Yisrael Siddur, in some other Siddurim where the authors of the Siddur, or the organizers of the Siddur, the editors of the Siddur, took great pains to put the right nusach into focus. So what we have here is actually the correct nusach, but I'll point out the two major differences from this and what might be construed as the popular nusach. Yedid Nefesh Avarachaman. The easy part here is Avarachaman, right? We ask Kadosh Baruch Hu, who shows compassion. We're familiar with that from our Siddur. If you daven Nusach Sfard, you say it 3 times a day, Avarachaman Shema Kolenu. If you daven Nusach Edot HaMizrach, you say Shema Kolenu Avarachaman. Because, that's the way we are. That's why if a Jew says Shalom Aleichem, the other guy says Aleichem Shalom. So we have, but Avarachman, but it's not there in the Shema Kolenu of Ashkenaz. Beseda, but it's there in the Slichas. Avarachman, everybody's familiar with Avarachaman, Avarachamim. That doesn't need explanation. But what is Yedid Nefesh? What does it mean, Yedid Nefesh? It says something about a soul, Yefemod, soulmate. That's very good translation. It means somebody who's not just a friend, but somebody who, it's to use the biblical expression, v'nafsho kshura b'nafsho, which says about Yaakov and Binyamin. V'nafsho kshura b'nafsho, just bound together. In theory, unfortunately it doesn't always happen, but that's what marriage is all about. But in theory, how do I know that? Because when it says, Vayu lebasar echad, it's also talking about that the physical should achieve the echad status of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So there's a spiritual union going on in marriage. That's what should happen. Unfortunately, I say it doesn't always happen, and sometimes marriages are doomed to failure, as we know. But Yedid Nefesh is a type of v'nafsho kshura b'nafsho. So before I even proceed, I'm just going to interject just a small sideshow, and that was in January 1976, when our great Rebbe of Soloveitchik Durov was a guest speaker at a dinner of my alma mater from Borough Park, Yeshiva Torah Semes Kamenetz, because the benefactor, Joseph Grus, Olav Shalom, donated at that time $1 million to build a new building. And he made a dinner in his own honor. Mr. Gross, give $1 million, you can make a dinner in your honor, I don't care. And he brought out all the Rabbanim who he gave a lot of money to the various yeshivas. So Rav Moshe Feinstein was there, Rav Kalmanovich from Mir was there, and Rav Shneir Kotler was there from Lakewood. I mean, it was an all-star cast of great Rabbanim. And everybody got their 2 minutes to get up and say nice things about Mr. Grus. The Rav was the feature speaker. He spoke 20 minutes. That was long for that particular event. And what was interesting was, without going into all the details, the Rav and Mr. Grus had a fallout on a question of a major donation of Mr. Grus to Yeshiva University to build the Grus Center here in Yerushalayim. And there was a little attachment to it that the Rav would come for a year and give shiurim. And the Rav didn't do it. He had various personal reasons why he didn't do it. Grus was good and angry. And in this fit of anger, he invites the Rav to be the guest speaker at the dinner. So I'm just telling you what kind of mensch Grus was. And my Rav and I were in the car when we picked up the Rav from LaGuardia Airport. And the Rav sat there silently and opened his mouth. You could see there was tension there. The minute he walked into the hall, he was buddy-buddy with Mr. Grus. And when he got up to speak, he literally broke the ice by saying the following. In biblical Hebrew, there are two words that express friendship. One is re'ah, reish ayin, which re'im ahuvim, that's re'im, or re'ehu in the Chumash, and the other is yedid. So why do you need two words? He said, because re'ah means you have a friendship with him today, but tomorrow maybe he'll stab you with the back. Ki yakum ish el re'ehu lehorgo be'orma me'im mizbechi tikachenu lamut. Pasuk in Parshat Mishpatim. Yet yesterday he was your friend. Today he stabbed you in the back. Yedid means that even if you don't see eye to eye, you still remain friends. And Joseph Grus and myself are Yedidim. That's how he began the speech. Then he went on. But that really softened the whole situation, relieved the atmosphere. It was a very, very tense situation. And so this, and I have a proof from the pasuk that I'm going to cite here that the Rav was right. He was 100% right. You look at source number 1. It says from Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu says, Azavti et beiti. Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I left my house, that is Beit HaMikdash. Natashti et nachalati. I've left Eretz Yisrael. This is a prediction of the Churban and the Galut. It's a prediction that as if it's in the past tense. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I left my house, I left my nachla, my land. Et yedidut nafshi, natati et yedidut nafshi b'chaf oiveha. And I gave my soulmate, as Rivka translated, in the palm of my enemy. So how is Am Yisrael described? As Yedid Nefesh. As Yedid Nefesh. It's Yedid Nefesh, it's Am Yisrael in Galut. This is what it means. And this, the author, Rabbi Elazar Askari, begins with this pasuk. So first of all, you see that the Rav is correct. That here, Kadosh Baruch Hu is good and angry at Am Yisrael, good and angry, willing to destroy the Beit HaMikdash, have the Beit HaMikdash destroyed, have Am Yisrael thrown out of Eretz Yisrael into the hands of the enemy, into the palm of the enemy, and yet still referred to as Yedid Nefesh. Natati et Yedidut Nafshi b'chaf oiveha. So Yedid Nefesh is the opening number. The Am Yisrael, Avarachaman, God has, he's actually flipping it to a certain degree because he's referring also to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's a two-sided arrangement. V'nafsho k'shura b'nafsho. Am Yisrael is the object of the tefillah, but the subject of the tefillah is clearly HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yedid Nefesh Avarachman. Mishoch avdecha el ritzonecha. Attract, pull and attract your servant. Again, your servant is singular, it's the author, but he's talking about Klal Yisrael in collective whole. To your will, el ritzonecha. And here I'm looking at source number 2. Source number 2, going back to the word Yedid. Here the Gemara Masechet Menachot, Daf Nun Gimel Lamed Aleph and Bet, the bottom of the page and top of the page of Amud Bet, explains the word Yedid. Who are the Yedidim? So it says, Ba Yedid, the Yedid will come, the friend, let's translate it, the friend will come, Ben Yedid, the son of the friend, V'yivneh Yedid, and the Yedid will build, Li-Yedid, to his Yedid, his friend, B'chalko shel Yedid, in the section of Yedid, V'yitkapru bo Yedidim, and the friends will be atoned, forgiven. Yavo. So who is this? What is a strange type of saying of some sort? So Chazal explained what this means. Yevo Yedid Zeh Shlomo HaMelech. The first is Shlomo HaMelech. As it says, Vayishlach b'yad Natan HaNavi Vayikra Shmo Yedidya, Bavur Hashem. Who is the Ben Yedid? That's Avraham. We are Bnei Avraham Avinu. Yevo Yedid, Ben Yedid, that's Avraham. Tichtiv Ma Yedidi Beveiti. And the Yevnei Yedid, and the Yedid will build. What will he build? He will build Beit HaMikdash, as it says, Ma Yedidut Mishkanotech. For whom? Liyadidcha, liyadid. The building is built for a Kadosh Baruch Hu, in honor of Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lishmi. Okay? V'zeh Kadosh Baruch Hu, Dichtiv Ashir al Hashem Yedidi. Bechelko shel Yedid, in the section of Eretz Yisrael of the Yedid, which is Binyamin, as it says, LeBinyamin Amar Yedid Hashem Yishkol Levetach Alav. V'yitkapru bo Yedidim, and the Yedidim, Am Yisrael, obviously will be forgiven. Elu Yisrael. Dichtiv, as it says in Yirmiyahu, Natati et Yedidut Nafshi b'chaf oiveha. So here the Gemara just elaborates on the word Yedid, and here the author picks up on this. Yedid Nefesh Avarachaman, Mishoch Avdecha Rutzanecha. Source number 3 from Shir Hashirim, Perak Aleph, Moshcheni Acharecha Narutza. We're asking Kadosh Baruch Hu, we want to be pulled, we want to be attracted, and we're going to run. We're going to run towards you. And this Yarutza, Narutza, spills into the second line of the poem. Yarutz Avdecha. So even though it's the next line of the poem, but it goes together. Yedid Nefesh Avarachman, Mishoch Avdecha El Rutzanecha, Yarutz. So it's Mishoch Narutza from this pasuk in Shir Hashirim. Yarutz Avdecha. Kemo Ayal, like a reindeer, sprinting. Yishtachaveh Mul Hadarecha. We will bow down opposite your glory. So in source number 4, you can see that this is taken out of Tilim Perak Membet, Ke'ayal Tarog al Fike Mayim, Ke Nafshi Tarog Elecha Elokim, the running towards Akadosh Baruch Hu, sprinting like a reindeer, has its roots in Tehillim. Ki yerav lo yedidotecha, yedidotcha, minofet suf b'chol ta'am. Your friendship, your didut, your friendship as sweet as the sweetest of the sweet. Sounds like Shlomo Kalbach. The sweetest of the sweet. Mamish. Mamish. Very good. Very good. So now I have an advertisement to make, because this coming Shabbat is the 18th of Tevet. It's the 100th birthday of Reb Shlomo Kalbach. And yours truly will be giving a Kalbach concert at Ol Nechama at 8 o'clock on Motzei Shabbos. You're all cordially invited. Okay. This Motzei Shabbos, yeah. So he used to say the sweetest of the sweet. Minofesh tzuf v'chol tam. The whole tam means every flavor. Where's minofesh tzuf? What does that mean? So look at source number 5 on the bottom of the page from Tilim Yutet. Speaking about Torah, the bottom of the page, source 5. Hanechemadim mizahav umipaz rav. The Torah is as valuable, as attractive to me, as desirous to me, as gold and the richest of pearls. Umetukim midvash, as sweet as honey. V'nofet tzufim. So nofet tzufim, the question is, what does that mean? So I opened up the Perush of Shantron Fal Hirsch on Tilim, and he says, I don't know what this means. But he rattles off 3 or 4 different parshanim who have different explanations, where the bottom line means very sweet. That's what it means. So one of it had to do with after sieving flour and thinning it out, the top level of the flour apparently has some sweetness, particular sweetness to it, whatever. That was one explanation. The other explanation, it comes from the bee's honey. Another explanation, it's a fruit. Whatever it is, suf, right. So nectar. That's how they translate it in English. Nectar, right. So whatever it is, it's the sweetest of the sweet. And that's what he wanted. Yerav means sweet. That's what it means. The word yerav means sweet. That's for sure. And ki yerav lo yididotecha minofet suf v'chol tam. And it's so sweet and so attractive because you're attracted to sweet things. Hadur na'eh ziv ha'olam. It is just glorious, the shine of the world. Nafshi cholat avatecha. I am lovesick towards you. Okay, the lovesick is going to be easy. If you look at the second page, source number 7, that comes from Shir Hashirim Perek Bet. Samchuni ba'ashishot, rapduni b'tapchuchim, ki cholat ahavat ani. The tapuchim is sweet apples, which, if I'm not mistaken, many of the Parshanim understand this to be an etrog. To be an etrog. And just parenthetically, how did Adam have an apple in the Eitz Hadat? Where did the apples grow in the Eitz Hadat? So there are 4 different midrashim. What was the fruit? So in the Gemara, Masechet Brachot, in the 6th parak, it tells us it could be grapes, it could be figs, it could be wheat. Don't ask me how wheat could be a fruit, but there's a medrash that says it was an etrog. That was an etrog. And in the translation of the medrash in the Latin, it became of Shir Hashirim. This tapuach, the etrog, became the tapuach, and it became the apple. So somehow there's an evolution of the midrashic idea that the fruit in Eitz Hadat was an apple, was an etrog, and evolves into an apple through Christian sources. So all the art of Adam and Gan Eden with an apple, it's all Christian art. It's not an apple. It's not the European and American apple, but it's an etrog. So here, Shir Hashirim, apparently the tapuach is the etrog, and the ashishot, some translated as raisins, as dried grapes. But whatever it is, it's sweet, and kicholat avat ani. So kicholat avat ani, the phrase is used by the author, nafshi cholat avatecha. But what does it mean? Hadur na'eh ziv ha'olam. So again, on the second page on top, this is Kabbalistic. And what we have here is a translation from the Aramaic in the Zohar Parshat Bishalach. B'sha'ah she'Kadosh Baruch Hu natan et HaTorah l'Yisrael. At the time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu delivers the Torah to Am Yisrael, yatsa or me'oto noam. So again, Kabbalistic use all kinds of words, phrases to describe certain levels or phenomenon about a Kadosh Baruch Hu, which most of it we don't understand. These are words, noam, which in this case means some type of a sweetness. Vehit ater bo Kadosh Baruch Hu, and a Kadosh Baruch Hu adorns himself like putting on a talus. Vehit ater bo Kadosh Baruch Hu with this noam, umeoto noam, whatever this sweetness is, yatsa ha-ziv l'chol ha'olam. There became a shine, a spiritual glow, let's call it a glow, that went out to the whole world. So this is a known Kabbalistic idea, of which Rabbi Elazar Alskari is adopting. Hadur na'eh ziv ha'olam. The world has been adorned with the shine, and that takes place at Har Sinai. Nafshi cholat avatecha, lovesick. And it's interesting that the Rambam, using Shir Hashirim in the 10th chapter of Hilchot Tshuva, talks about what it means to be lovesick. And you have to realize the Rambam was not an emotional guy. He was a litvak. I mean, he was as intellectual as you're going to get. And he translates this love as intellect. Balpi hade'ah tiyeh ha'ava. Proportional to the de'ah will be the love. And he believes that the mitzvah of Avat Hashem is not to throw kisses at a Kadosh Baruch Hu, or at the mezuzah, or at the Sefer Torah, or embrace the kotel. None of that stuff. The Rambam believes you're supposed to be cognitively thinking about connecting to Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's how he translates cholat ava. Cholat ava, lovesick. And that's why he believes that there are these mitzvot that are not time-bound because they're 24/7. The mitzvah of Anochi Hashem Lokecha, to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Avat Hashem, and Morah, having awe for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's round the clock. And therefore there are mitzvot tamid, they're always in effect. But if he's using the word cholah, sick, lovesick, so we're not talking about an illness of decay of tissue, which causes the breakdown of the organism. That's called getting sick in normal language. Nafshi cholat avatecha. Nevertheless, we're looking for a remedy. Where's the remedy? I'm lovesick. So how do I get close to Kadosh Baruch Hu? How does it work? Ana Elna rifana la, beharot la noam zivach. Where's that from? That's easy. Who said Elna rifana la? Moshe Rabbeinu said it when his sister Miriam had leprosy, had tzaraat, at the end of Parshat Balotcha. Kelna refana la. And the Gemara even tells us that when you talk to Kadosh Baruch Hu in Tefillah, you don't have to spend a long time doing it. You can't get a shorter tefillah than Moshe Rabbeinu, as it says, Kelna refana la. Some people think if they don't stand 20 minutes Shemon Esrei by Mincha, they didn't daven. 20 minutes, I think I could have davened twice in a minyan for Mincha. They say a story of Rav Avrum Shapiro Zatzal, who was the chief rabbi of Israel and Rosh Yeshiva of Merkaz Harav. So at the Hesped, somebody said the following story, that the guys in the Merkaz Beis Medrash, Merkaz Harav Kook Beis Medrash, they were very embarrassed that today younger Talmidim, they daven a lot of Islavas and everything, and they were finishing Shemon Esrei way after the Rosh Yeshiva. Rosh Yeshiva was finishing Shemon Esrei, and they were still davening. So they felt a little embarrassed with this whole thing. So somebody approached the Rosh Yeshiva and asked him, maybe when you get to the end of Shemon Esrei, just wait 5 minutes before you back up. Ois Shalom b'Mroimov. So the Rosh Yeshiva said, I already waited 5 minutes. That was said at the Hesped. So you don't have to have a long, drawn out, if something is on your mind and you have to get in a word to Kadosh Baruch Hu, you can get it in a quarter of a sentence. That's all. And so here, the author is using this tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu to ask Kadosh Baruch Hu to help me repair the cholat ahava. Not that it's bad, but I want to do something with this. What do I do with this cholat ahava? Beharot la noam zivach. I want to see that shine that emanates from the noam, from your sweetness. Please help me. Ve'az titchazek v'titrapei. I will be strengthened and cured from this chole ahava. Because why? Because hayta lach shifchat olam. I will then be your maid, your servant forever. I want to be your servant forever. What's the other nusach that most of us know? Simchat olam. Now, you can figure out how that mistake occurred. The interchange of a pei and a mem, sometimes in the writing, you can make mistakes. I mean, the classic mistake is between a resh and a dalet in manuscripts. Many times when they write, let's say in Rashi script, a resh and a dalet look very much alike. You can't make these mistakes, and you have to be aware of it. And when you have different manuscripts to compare, then you can make a judgment which is right and which is wrong. It's not that there were two versions out there that were authentic. One is right and one is wrong. And the Simchat Olam is wrong, except that I want to give an explanation to the wrong version, because Simcha in Halacha does not mean joy and gaiety. I'm so happy. Blah, 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 blah. That's not what it means. When the Torah says V'samachta b'chagecha, it means linking, rendezvous with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what it means. Being in close proximity with the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on this world, that's called Simcha. And on Yom Tov, there's a mitzvah to put yourself into that situation. And how do we call that mitzvah? Aliyah l'regel, to go up to Beit HaMikdash, El HaMakom Asher Yivchar Hashem L'Shaken Shmo Sham. How many times a year? Shalosh pamim b'shana, Yereh kol zchucha, Pnei Hashem Elokecha. That you must do it. And being in close proximity with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is such a soothing type of sensation that it does not tolerate mourning, avelut, being in mourning. And that is the root of the halacha that Simchat Yom Tov abolishes avelut. So if somebody, Rahman Litzlan, is sitting Shiva right before Yom Tov, and it can even mean an hour before Yom Tov, and comes Yom Tov, that's the end of the Shiva. You don't continue afterwards, as you know. So that's true for Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. And for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, there's a machloket, there's a dispute in the Mishnah Masechet Moed Katan, but the halacha is that it has enough simcha, Yamim Noraim, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, enough simchat Yom Tov also to abolish the avelut. That we know. And if a person completed the Shiva, but is now in the Shloshim in the 30 days, so the Yom Tov also then abolishes the Shloshim, and there's no continuation afterwards. The Kohen Gadol, those who are learning Daf Yomi, So just did a few weeks ago the Perek Sheni of Masechet Sanhedrin, where there are various halachot of Kohen Gadol and Melech, of king and Kohen Gadol. So the Kohen Gadol did not mourn even for his parents the way others mourned. So the Torah says, "La'avivu limo lo yitama," that Kohen Gadol doesn't even go to the Levaya, as if to say of his own parents. And there are some who say there's no mourning at all, and some say the Kohen Gadol does mourn, but on a more limited level. So there's a dispute on this. Why would you say that Kohen Gadol should not mourn his own parents? Why? So the Rav explained, because there's a special halacha that Kohen Gadol is Yom Tov the whole 24/7. The whole year it's regel b'fnei atzmo. It's a Yom Tov. So just like we don't mourn on Yom Tov, the Kohen Gadol doesn't mourn the whole year, because he is Omed Lifnei HaMelech. He's the Lefei Shechina. He's there before the Shechina every day. He's on duty in Beit HaMikdash. And that in itself takes away the Avelut. And David HaMelech said it, Gam ki elech begeit salmavet, even if he's standing in shadow of death, lo irara, I won't fear the evil. Why? Ki ata imadi. Just, that doesn't mean there won't be evil. That doesn't mean there won't be tzarot. It means you'll be able to make it through. The Kadosh Baruch Hu is holding your hand. Ki ata imadi. That is very, very soothing. So here, with regard to Simchat Yom Tov, this is why it doesn't tolerate Evel. So Simcha means standing before Kadosh Baruch Hu, and indeed, as titchazek v'titrapei v'aytala simchat olam could also work. It could also work in this context, because it means that he will always be in the state of simcha, of ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. In the Tochacha of Parshat Kitavo, it says, Tachat asher lo avadeta et Hashem b'simcha u'v'tuv levav. That you didn't have simcha of the mitzvah. You did the mitzvah, but you didn't do the mitzvah with the sensation that a Kadosh Baruch Hu was in front of you. How did Chazal try to correct that kind of imperfection in mitzvah performance? By saying a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu, to do such and such. He would put a Kadosh Baruch Hu right in front of us, so that the mitzvah should be performed b'simcha. Doesn't mean you have to be smiling or jumping. No. It was Rav Nachman from Bratslav who said, mitzvah gedolah liyot b'simcha tamid. So Rav Shach, Zechor Lebracha, said, this is heretical. How can you be b'simcha all the time? There's a mitzvah of avilut, of mourning. How can you mourn b'simcha? So he switched it around and he said, simcha gedolah liyot b'mitzvah tamid. It's a great simcha to always be involved in a mitzvah, no matter what the mitzvah is. Okay, that's a Litvische take on a Hasidic idea of mitzvah gedolah liyot b'simcha tamid. Okay, next stanza. Vatik yehemuna rachamecha, or yehemu rachamecha. The word na, please, got thrown in. V'chusana al ben ahuvecha. Okay, Vatik is a nickname of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Vatik. Well, doesn't mean the old man. That's right. See, let's see, what is the word Vatik? So we use the word Vatikin, right? Ezrach Vatik, right? So most of us sitting here have a card, right? Ezrach Vatik, right? We're old timers here. So Vatik, let's say Vetek in the work market means you're on the job, you have seniority, you're on the job for a long time, you're experienced, and so on. But in this case, Vatik actually means the oldest. That is to say, there's nobody older than a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu predates the creation of the world. So everybody else is after Bereshit bara Elokim. So anything before is the Vatik. So Kadosh Baruch Hu is the Vatik. He's the oldest around. Yemu rachamecha, right, should bestow his compassion. V'chusana al ben ahuvecha. So ben ahuvecha, it means B'nai Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was called Ohavi several times over. We are B'nai Avraham Avinu. It was out there. I don't have another one. There were no more? I don't have another one. Okay. So, 1 second. Do you have one? Yeah. Okay, fine. Settle. Vatik yamun achmecha b'chusana al ben avuecha. כי זה כמה נחשף לראות בתפארת עוזך. What is that? So let's turn the page to source number 9. This phrase is lifted out of Lavan, who tells Yaakov Avinu when he accuses him of stealing the gods, because Rachel put the gods under the saddle, right? And Yaakov says, check my house, check my house. I didn't take. And he says, Va'ata halo halachta. Yeah. You can go. You have my blessings, he tells Yaakov. You can go with the family. Ki nichsof nichsafta lebeit avicha. You longed, you yearn for your family. You've been out of the house 20 years. 20 years he's out of the house. But lama ganafta talahe. Hey, by the way, you could have taken everything else, but what'd you take my gods for? And that's when Yaakov tells him, he says, what are you talking about? You can. So this phrase, yearning lebeit avicha, that comes out of Lavan's mouth. So the Paitan says, Kizeh kama nichsof nichsaf, how much I yearn in that sense. Lirot b'tiferet uzecha. So again, turn the page to number 10. That reminds us of the second paragraph of Aleinu L'Shabeach. Al kein nikaveh lecha Hashem Elokeinu, lirot mehera b'tiferet uzecha. What are we saying in Al kein nikaveh? What's the source of Al kein nikaveh? It's not the Siddur. It's not the Siddur. It is Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. That's the source. So is Aleinu, by the way. And then it's been cut and pasted and put at the end of each davening. So when we say Malchiot, the 10 psukim of Malchiot, before the Tkiyat Shofar in the Chazarat HaShatz, on the bracha of Melech HaKol Haaretz Mekadesh Yisrael V'Yom HaZikaron, so the first of the 10 is Hashem Yimloch L'Olam Va'ed. And then comes V'ne'emar, 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 and then the Chazanim make all their shtiklach over there. But the beginning, Al Kein Nikaveh Lecha Hashem Elokeinu, the Chazan usually rattles it off. But it's a very, very important tefillah. And it's talking about when will Hashem be Yimloch L'Olam Va'ed? In the future. Because one of the psukim is from Zechariah, Vayashem L'Melech HaKol Haaretz, Vayomu Yashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. That also got transferred over to the Siddur at the end of Aleinu. So this is a Yemot HaMashiach theme. Lirot Mehera B'tiferet Uzecha. Everybody's going to see your strength. Everybody. It's going to be unquestioned. No competition in Yemot HaMashiach. Al kein nikaven lecha Hashem Elokeinu. Lirot Mehera B'tiferet Uzecha. Lahavir gilulim min haaretz. We're telling HaKadosh Baruch Hu that there won't be any idolatry, no competition there. You're going to be exclusive. Ki lecha tichra kol berech, tishava kol lashon. Only to you will people bow. We say this in Aleinu. Let's say it slowly today, so we should understand each line. So the Paitan lifts this out of context. Anna, where he says, "Vatik yemun archamecha v'chusana al ben avovecha, ki ze kamen nichsaft or nichsafti in the other girsa lirot b'tiferet uzecha." I'm looking forward to reach this destination of tiferet uzecha. Anna, Eli, my God, machmad libi. For the word chamda, chemed means my desire, my lust. Chusha. Na ve'al titalem. Do not put me on the side. Don't put me on the side. Don't be mitalem. Don't ignore me. So this is where the other version comes in. Ele chomda libi v'chusana ve'al titalem. And the nice song was composed around it. But this is the original. Ana eli machmad libi chushana ve'al titalem. So basically he's saying, I just want to bring this all the way up to Yemot HaMashiach. I'm in the 6th century. Things are hard. I'm sitting in Tzfat. Higalena ufros chaviv alai. I know the other version is chavivi alai. Higalena, reveal to me. Reveal to me. Now there are some who are suggesting that the author believes that he is capable of receiving the grace of God as a Navi, to be able to. Now, let's put this in a halachic perspective. Rabbi Yehuda Levi, in his Kuzari, believed that any Jew as long as he's a God-fearing Jew, performs mitzvot, doesn't have to be top of the line in the elitist group, can theoretically become a Navi if a Kadosh Baruch Hu sees fit to appoint you as a prophet. That's all. The Rambam categorically disassociates himself from that and believes that only the elite of the elite intellectually and the perfect of the perfect in terms of behavior can become candidates of being a Navi. Then a Kadosh Baruch Hu has to close the deal by applying Nevuah, making that connection, that spiritual connection to you through the mode of dreams. Through the mode of dreams. The Nevi'im lost consciousness. They went into a coma of sorts, and they had this vision at the time. That's how Nevuah worked. But if you didn't have the necessary prerequisites of being absolutely top of the grade, top of the class in intellect, and perfect in midot, in character, you don't have a chance. You weren't even a candidate.
Did you once say that he was studying to be a Navi?
Correct. So that's the problem when Rivka comes to my shiurim. She actually remembers what I said. And that is correct. The Rambam was preparing himself for the eventuality of becoming a Navi. Now he says, clearly, Rambam says, you can't do anything about it if a Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't come through. But you cannot expect to be a Navi if you don't do everything humanly possible to make the grade of being a candidate. And he proves this from the student of Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Baruch ben Neriah, who in Yirmiyah chapter 45 or 46, it's almost a note of consolation to his student, Baruch ben Neriah. Yirmiyah says, from my point of view, you graduated. You were top. I'm not at fault that a Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't come through. Don't blame me. I have no control over that. But I did my job. I prepared you to being a Navi. And the Rambam derives from there that you can, even in this very age, prepare yourself for being a Navi. And some claim that these phrases, Baharot la Noam Zivach, Lirot b'tiferet uzecha, that he is warming himself up for that possibility of receiving some nevuah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah.
Isn't it brought down somewhere that in Nativ Lavo, Nevuah will come back?
That's no question about it. The Rambam believes that. And he says that is the pshat of Hinei Anochi Sholech Lachem et Eliyah Hanavi Lifnei Bo Yom Hashem HaGadol VaNorah. Rambam is not sure that it's Mr. Eliyahu Hanavi. And this is shocking because the Rambam says, Yesh min hachachamim she'omrim shekodem sheyavo hamashiach yavo Eliyahu. Translated simply, some of the chachamim have the opinion that prior to Yemot HaMashiach, Eliyahu is going to show up. It's just yesh min hachachamim. It's just some. I mean, that kind of language suggests that there were quite a few others who don't accept this, including the Rambam. And the Rambam says, V'lo yada adam ma yu achayu. But I got news for you. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. Not the greatest Zionist and not the greatest anti-Zionist. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen until it happens. That's what the Rambam says. And therefore he says, do not bet on one possibility. He says, don't bet on it. You don't know what's going to be. Don't predict, don't bet. You don't know what's going to be. And he explains the pasuk, Hinei Anochi Sholech Lachem et Eliyah Navi, as the restoration of prophecy. And he says that Melech HaMashiach will be a Navi, and there will be other Nevi'im at the time. So that's correct, because he believes that in Yemot HaMashiach, our connection possibilities and potential will rise to some type of ideal state. That's correct. But here it's possible that this Rabbi Elazar Askari is moving himself up the ranks to arrive at that. And he says, Higalena, revealed to me, again, revealed to me, this is revelation. Ufros chaviv alai et sukat shlomecha. Where does that phrase come? Et sukat shlomecha? So turn the page. Source number 11. From Ma'ariv on Shabbat and Yom Tov, from the bracha of Hashkivenu. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. And it ends with Baruch Atah Hashem, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, bal kol amo Yisrael v'Yerushalayim. Now you see from here, he had Nusach Ashkenaz. How did Nusach Sfarad say? And it's interesting, he's a Sfaradi. But he had clearly Nusach Ashkenaz. Nusach Sfaradi is Ufros Aleinu Sukat Rachamim Chayim V'Shalom. Baruch Atah Hashem. But Ufros Aleinu Sukat Shlomecha is Nusach Ashkenaz, as we know it. And it's clear that he's tapping into that Nusach when he says Ufros Chavivi Alai et sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, and he and his colleagues started a type of club. I say a club I want to say it in a spiritual sense, called Sukkot David, where he believed that Sukkot Shalom, I mean, not Sukkot David, Sukkot Shalom, where he believed that what was absolutely necessary was to bring about harmony amongst all of Am Yisrael. And if we don't bring about harmony of Am Yisrael, there won't be Yemot HaMashiach. You want to know something? He's right. We're not there yet. If you don't believe me, check out last night's news. We're not there yet. Unfortunately, I cry saying this, but we're not there yet. After all that we've gone through, we're just not there yet. So he's using this phrase out of Hashkivenu, and I'll just say parenthetically something very, very important about that ending. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, baruch ata Hashem, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'akol amo Yisrael v'Yerushalayim. So I said this is the Ma'ariv Hashkivenu of Shabbos and Yom Tov. How do we end it in the weekday? Shomer amo Yisrael la'ad. Kadosh Baruch Hu guards us. That's all. There's no Yerushalayim, no sukat shlomecha. None of that is there. However, it's been pointed out by great scholars who've dealt with nusach, language of nusach of tefillah, and I'll quote now Professor Toshma, Zichron Lebracha, a great, great historian at the Hebrew University, who points out that the nusach Shomer Amo Yisrael La'ad that we do for weekday was actually the nusach of Bavel, of the Babylonian Jewish community in the days of Chazal, both on weekday as well as on Shabbat and Yom Tov. And ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha baruch ata Hashem haporei sukat shalom aleinu v'akol amo Yisrael v'Yerushalayim was the nusach of Hashkivenu in Eretz Yisrael for both Shabbat and weekday. And what happened in the days of the Geonim, we made a compromise. And we adopted the Babylonian nusach for weekday and the Eretz Yisrael nusach for Shabbat and Yom Tov. And that makes a lot of sense because in Galut, we needed the protection. Shomer amo Yisrael la'ad. The weekday was harsh, both in terms of safety, economically, we needed that protection. But on Shabbat and Yom Tov, our whole mindset changed. And no matter where we are, we're in Eretz Yisrael, in the moments of Geula, of redemption. Haporei sukat shalom aleinu. And that's why Ashkenazi Jews allowed Birkat Kohanim for Musaf of Yom Tov. Because in Musaf of Yom Tov, we have a flashback to Yerushalayim during Musaf of Yom Tov. And we play it out. B'nei beitcha kevatchila, v'chonen mikdashcha mechono, v'areinu b'vinyano, v'samcheinu v'dikono. And let the Kohanim go up for Birkat Kohanim. And it only happens on Yom Tov in Chutz La'aretz. So we have here, Higala no fros chavivi alai et sukat shlomecha, ta'ir eretz mikvodecha, nagila v'nismecha bach. Kadosh Baruch Hu should illuminate his land with his glory, and we should all then rejoice. We'll see where this comes from. Maher ahuv, my love, quickly, kiva moed, the time has come. Or as we might say, long overdue. V'choneni kimei olam, and you will desire us the way once upon a time you used to. What's this all about? Let's flip the page. So, Nagila v'nismecha, first of all, number 12 in Yecheskel, Perek Mem Gimel, where he's talking about the third Beit HaMikdash, and it says, V'nei kvodo Elokei Yisrael ba midorom derech kadim v'kolo ki kol mayim rabim ve'haaretz ha'ira michvodo. The land will be illuminated with his glory. So you see, he takes this from this pasuk, and then Nagila v'nismecha bach comes from the same pasuk quoted earlier from Shir Hashirim, Moshcheni acharecha narutza haviani hamelech hadarav. Nagila v'nismecha bach, but you have a parallel in Hallel, in Perek Kuf Yudchet, Zeh hayom asa Hashem, Nagila v'nismecha bo. So you have the same thing in both places, and he uses this. And then in Tilim Kuf Bet, Ata takum terachem Tzion, ki eit lechenena kiva moed. The time has come. And then he says, Vorval Hashem minchat Yehuda v'Yerushalayim, and it will be sweetened, the gifts that we will offer you in Yehuda and Yerushalayim. In when? Ki me'olam uchshanim kadmaniot. The way once upon a time it was, as if in the words of Eicha, Yirmiyahu's Eicha, Hashivenu Hashem alecha v'neshuva, chadesh yameinu ke kedem, like it once it was, ki me'olam uchshanim kadmaniot. In the same phrase in Amos Perek Tet, Bayomahu Akim et Sukkot David Anofelet. That's another Kalbach song from Harachaman from Sukkot. V'gadarti et pirtzeihem v'harisotav Akim. Kadosh Baruch Hu will close the breaches and will rebuild uvnitiha kimei olam, the way it once upon a time was. So kimei olam, the way the old days, the way it once a time was. He uses this. Higalana ufros chavivi alai et sukat shlomecha ta'ir eretz mikvodecha. You should illuminate the land with your glory. Nagila v'nismecha bach. We will all then be able to rejoice. Ze hayom asher asa Hashem. Nagila v'nismecha bach. Maher, quickly, ahuv. Kiva moed. The day has come. V'choneni kimei olam. And you should desire us the way once upon a time you used to. One last theme on the pasuk. V'orval Hashem minchat Yehuda. V'Yerushalayim kimei olam uchshanim kadmoniot. You see that this particular poem is a poem of yearning for that ultimate closeness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, translating it into the state of Geulah, of redemption from Yisrael, certainly appropriate to be sung on Shabbat, that has been infused with the spirit of Geulat Am Yisrael. Rav Kook Zatzal, in one of the writings that was recently discovered, with all the library of the Torah of Rav Kook that we have today, I was told we only have less than half of what he's written. And in Beit Rav Kook, not far from here, by foot, they're still working on unraveling things that Rav Kook wrote. And piece by piece, they print, they publish new books. So something came out about a decade ago where Rav Kook is speculating about the possibility that in Yemot HaMashiach, we actually may not go back to the whole system of animal sacrifices. Now, this is very, very problematic when you read Rambam. Very problematic. Rambam believes that we're going back to everything. And you don't think it's humane, you don't like the way it looks, it's because we haven't had it for 1900 years. But when it's a day-to-day activity, you get used to it. If we wouldn't have Brit Milah for 1,000 years, and all of a sudden we want to go back to Brit Milah, there would be plenty of Jews saying, this is outrageous. There's still, yeah, but not that many. I got news for you. In the statistics of this country of religious and traditional commitment and observance, so about 20% define themselves as dati. That could be dati, lumi, charedi, people who keep Shabbat, kashrut, daven, put on tefillin, and so on, so on, so on. Or Shomrei Torah mitzvot, 20%. That's twice as much as American Jewry, where it's 10%. But here it's 20%. But up to 60%, 65% define themselves as traditional. This is what my kids call dati light. Dati light. They'll go to shul Friday night. The wife will light candles. They'll make kiddush. They'll watch TV afterwards. So a lot of the Sephardim. I saw this in Beersheba. I saw this with my own eyes. And that beseda. It's what? Masorti. They call it Masorti, right? My kids call it Dati light. It's Masorti. Traditional Jews. Beseda. It's a lot. It's a lot more. It's a lot more than nothing. It's a lot more than nothing. And I'm not being mizalzel. I'm becoming a Barditcheva who said, look at the cup that's half full, not half empty. Beseda. But then up to about 80% won't eat chametz on Pesach. Why? For traditional reasons. The grandfather, the grandmother didn't eat chametz on Pesach. They'll have a seder. And they say closer to 90%. It used to be 91%. They say it's a little less now. Will fast on Yom Kippur. So secular Jews fast on Yom Kippur. I remember seeing a TV news show before an Erev, day before Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur, where they wanted to show two scenes of Erev Yom Kippur. So one, they went to Meir Sharm, they showed kaparas of the chickens. Very makes for good television, kaparas. Okay, and then they went to North Tel Aviv. North Tel Aviv? What are you going to do in North Tel Aviv? That's the bastion of secular life. They went to a bike store. They interviewed two high school kids getting new equipment because you ride the bikes on Yom Kippur because there's no traffic. It's an open highway. So they were interviewing him. What you're getting this year, and then the reporter asked the person, "And you're fasting tomorrow on Yom Kippur?" Betach, c'est Yom Kippur. Of course, it's Yom Kippur. What kind of stupid question? He's going to fast Yom Kippur riding the bike. And if he's not in shul, it's our fault. We didn't do enough to bring that boy into shul on Yom Kippur. Believe me, we say al chait on that. So, and the highest is Brit Milah. They said up to 96% make Brit Milah here in Eretz Yisrael, which means if somebody doesn't do a Brit, he's a real lahachasnika. I mean, really, not to do a Brit and to so disconnect. The first things Russian Jews came in 1990, 1981, the adults went to Mizgav Ladach, where they had adults under anesthesia do Brit because they wanted it, because the Soviets were against it. They knew it was right. They knew it was good. It was good for the Jews. So we don't know what's going to be with regard to Korbanot in the third Beit HaMikdash. But Rav Kook says it could be that based on a medrash, there is a medrash. It's found in Vayikra Rabbah. And it says that in the third Beit HaMikdash, there's only going to be one type of korban. It's going to be a Thanksgiving korban Todah. Todah will always be able to say, will always have to say Todah. But atonement, forgiveness, we won't need because we're going to be good Jews. So there won't be a need for the korbanot. It's not that they're off the books. They'll be on the books, but nobody's going to bring anything that will necessitate atonement, kapara. Okay, and Rav Kook says, this is what Malachi, the beginning of Bayit Sheni, is saying. Vorval Hashem minchat Yehuda will only bring a korban mincha, which is out of grain offerings. That's what we're going to bring in the third Beit HaMikdash. We're not going to bring animal. And he says that meat used to be the bread, which means the basic staple. And in Parshat Emor, the Kohen was not supposed to become Tamei, ki et lechem elokecha hu makriv. He deals with the lechem. What's the lechem elokecha? Was the meat, because people offered meat, because that was their basic staple, and they wanted to show that it's all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But in the days of Yemot HaMashiach, says Rav Kook, it is possible that the korban will only be grain, and the lechem elokecha is only going to be a korban mincha. And it's based on this pasuk, Vorval Hashem minchat Yehuda v'Yushalayim kimei olam. Again, Rav Kook wrote it. What's going to be? I fall back on the Rambam. Ke lo yada adam ma yu achiyu. And this is what was that, Koki? Right. Rav Kook was a vegetarian, and the question was, so was the Nazir, his prime student after he came to an Aliyat Eretz Yisrael, Rav David Cohen. And the question is going to be, how did these vegetarians think? And he was a Kohen, and so was Rav David Cohen. And there's a mitzvah to eat from the korbanot. So how is he going to do it? Mela, the truma and maser, okay, that's fruits and vegetables and grain. But what about the korbanot? So that's what he thought. He thought that in Yemot HaMashiach we're all going to go back to Adam and Chava pre-Gan Eden, and only the heter, the permissibility to eat meat, kicks in only in the 10th generation after Noach, after the Mabel. So therefore, he says that's what it means. Chadish Yemenu ke kedem, Gan Eden mi kedem. We're going back to the days of Gan Eden mi kedem. So we're all going to be vegetarians. So that's why there won't be a need for the animal korban any longer, and whatever's going to be is going to be a grain offering, which basically is a korban mincha. Vorval Hashem minchat Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. Sensational idea of Rav Kook. Yitz Hashem, we should live to see it. That's all.